Welcome, everybody. I'm Brandon Dawkins with Tribune Digital Media, here with Scott Buttram, publisher of the Trussville Tribune, for another one of our mayoral candidate interviews for the city of Trussville. We are taking this time to do extensive interviews with each person running for the position of mayor in Trussville. It's an important election. We've talked about that a number of times. And these interviews were done in advance. They will be released after qualifying all at one time. They are unedited, and they are conversations with each of these candidates where they have time to think and answer questions and talk about things that they think are important, and we get to ask about things that we think are important.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, unedited, which means you'll hear every full question and every full answer from the candidates. Excited about this. You also mentioned this is an important election, and you're right, because this, no matter what happens, we're going to have a change in administration, okay? Right. I would say to our viewers, think about what happened after the last change of administration, okay? After Mayor Melton, I believe, had been there 16 years, is that correct? 4 terms?
Yes.
Before the Buddy Choate administration began 9 years ago.
This much change in the city.
Completely transformed our city. In the last 9 years, we have a downtown, whereas we had a main street with a few open businesses, a lot of empty buildings and empty warehouses and light industrial behind it. Now we have, I think, one of the most beautiful downtowns in the state of Alabama. It has completely changed the direction of our economy, of the retail available for our citizens. So a change of administration
is always important in a city.
It is very important, because leadership takes time and building cities takes time, and so you want to get that right person in there to continue the great things that have happened here. Administration before that started Trussville City Schools.
There you go. Good point. Also major. Okay.
Major stuff. So it's a big deal.
Well, our conversation today obviously is with City Council person Lisa Bright. Lisa, we're going to be on first name basis, if that's okay with you.
That is perfect with me.
And we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. We know you're busy right now. We appreciate you doing
Thank y'all for taking time out of your schedule to sit and interview 3 mayoral candidates, and I'm hearing fairly lengthy interviews too. So.
But y'all have got a lot to say, and,
yes, we do.
Our goal here, and I think I shared this with y'all in an email. We're talking about your political background, your work history, all the things that the experiences that kind of brought you to this point.
Sure.
And we won't, you're going to have stuff you got to be accountable for. You've been serving for 5 years. But we also, and this may be the most important part of the interview today, is we want the candidates to have a chance to lay out their plan for Trussville so we can determine which is the best direction.
Absolutely.
Lisa, let's start with, because sometimes we're bad to just assume that everybody is familiar with each candidate, because we've all been here in Trussville for a long time, but the fact is we always acknowledge how quickly Trussville is growing, and there's lots of people that don't know everyone's background. So I want you to take a little bit of time and just really tell people your background and how you got to where you are today on the city council.
Yeah. Who are you again?
Lisa Bright. I've been here 36 years.
I remember you.
Yeah, I think I know. You hang out with my grandchildren.
I do.
Thank you for that. No, thank y'all. I appreciate
it's hard to get formal when you're small town folks.
And I do feel very comfortable here. Yeah. I mean, you've supported the Will Bright Foundation through the different events that we do, so that makes me very comfortable here. But no, my name is Lisa Bright, and my husband and I, Bill, have lived here for 36 years. We moved here in 1989. We lived over in the Clay Chalkville area, and Amy was getting ready to go to elementary school, and we just thought, well, we would love to be able to get into Trussville. Didn't know if we could afford it at the time, but we found a house in Calumet, and I mean, we thought our dreams have come true because the school system. There again, it was with Jefferson County at that point in time, but we came because of the school systems. So it started there, and like I said, we've lived here for 36 years. We've raised our family here. All 3 of my children are Hewitt-Trussville graduates. It was Hewitt-Trussville then, and all 4 of my grandchildren are in Trussville City Schools right now. So we're invested in this community. My husband's had a business here for years. I have had a business here in a drapery design world. What led me to this point of where I am right now with all the things with mayoralhood and city council is through the loss of my son. When we lost Will and we started our foundation, the Will Bright Foundation, it made me realize that was a gift that God gave me, a gift to serve and to know how to serve people and where to serve them, meet them where they are. So through that, I just developed the ability and the knowledge of that's so very important, and you need to make sure if that's your gift, you need to share it. So I come to as running as for mayor as just wanting to serve the community, wanting to give back to a community that's been so generous to us over the years, and just grateful to have the opportunity of being able to serve on city council. I think we were just chatting earlier how important it is to have that city council experience to be able to run for the big job of mayoralhood. So just grateful for that. As far as living in Trussville, we've attended church here. I'm a Trussville Rotarian at the Daybreak Rotary Club. I've served years ago when it was before the Athletic Association. When we were at the old stadium, the Jack Woods Stadium, I took over for Betty Roselle. You remember Betty Roselle?
I do.
So I was I was in charge of Silver Husky, and let me tell you what, you don't
That's a big job. You don't want to play
you
around
don't
with
move
that.
people's seats on Silver Husky. They will get very upset with you. But that was one of my first really experiences of working with a lot of people in kind of a little bit of a tense situation and learning how to manage yourself. And maybe an awkward situation if you accidentally happen to move somebody's seats on Silver Husky. But I enjoyed doing that. So I've enjoyed serving through this community for years and years and years. Feel like we have invested a lot in this community, and now it's time for me to give back.
Yeah. And I'll say small towns do not survive without people doing that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we talked about that in some of the other things that it really requires citizen involvement or it doesn't work. Doesn't work. You got...
Well, let's start out with the same question that we asked the other candidate. So let's talk about the one thing in these last 5 years on City Council that the administration did that you're the most proud of. One
thing that I'm the most proud of, I'm going to have to go to, because today was Chamber of Commerce. In today's Chamber of Commerce, we focused, the speaker was Chrissy Bradford, and we spoke about leadership Trussville. Yeah. And I'm going to have to go there. There are a lot of things I'm proud of that we have done, but that program is really going to leave a legacy, I think, for Trussville. So for those who are not familiar with it, it's a 9-month program. It was Mayor Choate's idea when he came on. He had gone to a Leadership Birmingham program and served on a panel and thought this would be fantastic to bring this program to Trussville and let people know more about what the community is, how they can get involved, not necessarily run for office or serve on a board, but just volunteer or come to Chamber of Commerce meetings. And I just have watched it grow. So I was in the first class, and we just finished class 3, and now we're taking applications for class 4. So you just see the legacy that's bringing and how we've been able to take this, and every class that goes through it, they're like, I had no idea this was in Trussville. Or someone said, I've lived here my entire life and thought, I really don't want to do this because I already know everything about Trussville. Right. And they're like, no, I don't, and I really learned a lot about it. And I think that's so good for a community, especially a community that's growing. You want to be able to include people that have lived here a long time and people that have lived here a year, and let their businesses get involved. Great opportunities for sponsorships, which just encourages community togetherness. That's probably going to be my most favorite thing that I think is going to leave the most lasting impression. And then of course our schools, I could go on and on about our schools, but totally new projects to this administration, I'm going to pick Leadership Trussville.
Well, it's so interesting that each of those classes, comes with a project that they do, and they really do something concrete, and often leave it to.
Pulls us right in. Yeah. I've served on the media panel for Leadership Birmingham 2 different years, and served on the media panel for Leadership Vestavia 1 year. And it was interesting, the very first time I got a call, it was from Barnett Wright, our friend, who asked me to serve on the panel, and right before he hung up, he said, you can ride with your mayor, he's on our governmental panel.
I love
if you want to. And that was the first conversation Buddy and I had, and he already had in his mind creating that program in Trussville. So I agree with you. I think it has been a big asset for the community. I think it was a good thing for the council to start. Let me ask you this: what tangible results have you seen from that? Can you name names?
So glad you asked me that. So like you said, each group has a project. So from that, our group, of course, you know, my background is we chose to serve in the area of being able to provide more social services to families in our schools and in our community, not just tied to our schools. So we started a nonprofit called Huskies Together, huskiestogether.org, and it is a resource from the website of just tons of resources for a family that maybe their child's struggling with depression or, you know, drug addiction or vaping or too much cell phone time, all the things that encompass around adolescence.
Right.
It's an opportunity to have resources there. When we were going through everything that we went through with Will, and when we lost Will, we didn't have that.
Right.
And so when our group got together, bless their heart, they had no idea how much work we were going to have to put into this, but it's been fantastic. And so once we got it set up and moving through the schools, we got a grant through the state where we were able to hire someone, and they come in and teach what's called Aaron's Law. And that is teaches a child to speak up when something maybe isn't quite right at home, to be able to know how to go and talk to a teacher or someone else that they could share maybe things that are going on that shouldn't be going on. So I think that's very important that we teach that in our middle school and our high school, and then moving forward we will apply for another grant that we can hopefully make that position full-time, continue the teaching aspect of it with social work behind it, and great partnership with the schools, but it's going to fall under Huskies Together. We're funding it. Another thing of Leadership Trussville is, you know, you want to do your community service project, but you also have to make it sustainable. How are you going to pay for it? So through the state of Alabama, the opioid lawsuit funds monies come into each municipality. So through the mayor and city council approving it, we got that approved to fund Huskies Together, even though we're still getting grants for primarily most of it, to be able to fund that, to offer that to not just the people in our schools, but for the whole community. So personally, I'm going to say that was the biggest thing. But then there's some things from that where we've got people doing things at the dog park, and we've got things through the Historical Society, other projects, I mean, great projects, and you just don't ever know exactly where they're going to lead, but that people had the intuition of gathering, this would be a great fit for Trussville, this is how we're going to fund it, this is how it's going to be sustained, I think is a wonderful thing to do.
Okay, as a follow-up to Brandon's first question, I've already followed up a little bit, but
it's okay. Go ahead.
We may go all
I end
over
up with
Yeah.
the negative
Yeah,
questions.
Imagine.
What over the last 5 years, what's the one item you regret, wish you had done differently?
Oh.
Or it may be something you wish the city had done differently. But
Done differently, or, well, I will say, you know, and I'll probably have to go with the one that was probably the hardest and hit most personal, and that was probably with our school system, when we went through the transition from one superintendent to another. That was very hard. We had a situation at the high school that could have maybe been handled a little different. It was brought to the BOE, it was brought to the council. We had a packed house and very, very upset parents. And I think some of that could have been avoided with better communication. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? You know, hindsight is 50-50, as Pat Dye would say. So, you know, you don't ever want to have to walk through that again. So you really want to make sure that we're more in sync, more on the same page to try to avoid any of that kind of negativity within our community, because it was very dividing. And I think we have a fantastic school system, we have a fantastic city, and we just have to be a little more mindful that we're really communicating well together with our SROs and try to prevent that from ever happening again, because that really affected our families.
yeah, and not to make it sound shallow, but it was embarrassing to see our community have to go through that.
Yeah,
I think it hurt everybody to watch it unfold. You got one?
Yeah. Do you want to turn immediately to the budget?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the budget.
Let's just go for it.
I mean, I think that's one of the hot button issues
Yes,
facing
it
the
is.
community.
Okay.
So, yeah, and probably a lot of the viewers would like to hear that right up front.
Okay.
So let's
All
get
right.
into it.
So, what do you feel like? So, roughly $3 million deficit that y'all have been dealing with recently. But moving forward, what do you feel like needs to be done immediately, and especially immediately when the new mayor is seated? What is going to be some of those first steps to balancing and dealing with that budget deficit?
Replacing reserves.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's start, so like right now. So as you all know, we have replaced our finance director, which we've already seen unbelievable help in that area. So I have not sat on the finance committee before, but I will moving forward, so I have a better understanding of the budget and the budget process. I'm going to run a nonprofit with a lot less zeros, and so I understand how to set a budget and how to go by a budget, but on a municipality level it's a little bit different. On the short term of what we'll have to do is going into budget season. So how are we going to go through each department and start, okay, this is what we've got to do. This is where we're projected to be come October, and how can we make that projection even up? How can we balance this budget? So working with our new finance director, being able to know exactly what those numbers are, where we are off,
right,
and being able to go forward on that. There's not the one thing that I know that the city is about to start is an potential early retirement offer, where our personnel is high, but our personnel is very important. It's 80% of our budget. That's not unusual for most cities, because a city provides services. You pay your tax dollars, and you want your parks and rec, and you want your library. Those are the things that you're paying your money for, so we have to make sure we're very diligent on that. But I think the first thing that we'll have to do is make sure that we're going into the season balanced, and that's going to be in a lot of cuts. How we get the reserve fund back, so we sold property.
Before you move into the reserve fund, just let me ask you, you said there'll be a lot of cuts. You mentioned early retirements. Have you identified any other cuts at this point?
Not identified definite cuts, other than we're just going to go department by department and see exactly where there are some areas that we can make some changes in, and hopefully be able to bring them back if they're things that we can do later. First thing right off the top of my head is we may have to look at, we have a lot of training, and those are important things. We may not be able to travel to those trainings. Those are some line items that we may be able to come in and shave some of those off. Some of them require that. And if they're required and we've got to maintain, on the public safety end, then we've got to maintain that. But then there's some that maybe aren't, that we could do online. So those are some smaller things that we can look at. I think the biggest thing will be doing the early retirement, and those that maybe are, and just get that number down through attrition. So I think it's a perfect storm on what all happened with our finances, and I think it happened to a lot of municipalities. Is first of all, it was inflation. So everything's gone up. Your utility bills, your insurances, just like they went up on you at home, they went up on the city as well. Then we had the SSUT, which I'm sure that's on your list to talk about. We'll come back to that. So
I've been eyeball deep, and not just over Trussville. I've been eyeball deep in that for 3 or 4 weeks, because it's a statewide issue.
100%. So those are some short-term things. They're looking at every department and cutting what you possibly can, until we can get this kind of leveled back out. The longer term, as far as so Glendale. Let's talk about Glendale. So we bought that to put the schools there. When we originally were looking to put a school there was a developer behind it that would help share some of that cost of infrastructure, and because now, when we decided to sell it, infrastructure had gotten almost to $20 million just to get into Glendale. So that's not feasible when you don't have a lot of extra, you're going to put a school there, which is great because it's needed, but you're not bringing in a lot of extra money there as well. So you have to look at the checks and balances on that. But Glendale, we do have 2 offers right now, and if one of them goes through, the city will make a little money on the property, which is a win, and that goes back into that general fund. So also being able to work with the schools, we continue to give that 1 cent, and we'll always give that 1 cent as far as I'm concerned to the schools. That was passed back in '02. And there are some shared costs there that we can maybe look at. There again, better partnerships and communications with our schools, because we still have a lot of things we have to do.
If somebody asks you about that 1 cent and they ask you to defend continuing to give it if possibly the city needs it, what do you tell them?
Well, I tell them that that was how it was originated back in '02, and of course I know from that came, I know this is going to be on your list too, the garbage fee. And it wasn't necessarily written in stone, but it wasn't. It was a promise, and you do try to. I think if the city ever stops supporting the school on a pretty high level, that's not good. I think that that's why we're good. The school is the economic engine for our town. I ask people all the time that are just recently moved here, what brought you to Trussville? 90% of the time they're like, Trussville City Schools, I wanted my kids to go here, or my grandkids. They moved here because of Trussville City Schools, and so the grandparents are moving here to be close to the grandkids. So I don't ever see taking that away. Now, is there a way that we can share some cost on some things? So, bringing up the school turns 20 years old in July, which is amazing.
That is.
It is very amazing.
It's hard to believe.
It really is hard to believe.
20 years.
But I mean, look we're still considered, we're not even legal yet, not even 21 yet.
They're still,
So
we're still teenagers.
We're still considered an adolescent.
That explains a lot.
But, and then you look at these other systems that have been around for, 30, 40 years. And we're right up there with them and competing, and even better in some instances. But no, I would think but we can share cost on, we have SROs in our schools, which we can't have too many, in my opinion. So, Payne needs another SRO as well.
And the city funds them.
SROs.
Yeah.
City funds 8 of them.
That's a little unusual. That doesn't happen in every city.
Yeah, and so those are things that we will be looking at. The 1 cent, it'll stay there, as far as I'm concerned. But there are other things that we do provide as a city to our school system, which we started with, which was what we needed to do.
I agree.
But as we've grown, and kudos to Dr. Martin and Jim Kirkland on finance, they have done an excellent job of maintaining their finances and being able. We just need to maybe look at some of that there again, budgeting, and how we move forward on that.
And before, this is for the audience benefit, before we go to the next thing, some people may roll their eyes when Brandon brought up is, what about the 1 cent for schools? Is that safe? I just want to share, because everybody doesn't know what goes on in surrounding communities. Hoover did that, and Hoover pulled the 1 cent away from schools because the city had to have it to operate. So asking that question is very legitimate, because we've seen it happen in Metro Birmingham.
For mayor may have a different perspective on it. So
Right.
I think it's an important thing to put out there and to ask each
Well,
candidate.
which kind of leads to my next question, okay? 10% sales tax is pretty much, I know there's a couple of exceptions, that's pretty much across the board in all 35 Jefferson County cities. So that means the state gets 4 pennies of the 10%, they get 4% of that. The county gets 2%. That leaves the cities that are at 10% with 4%. So that decision made back in 2002? I thought it was 2002. Under Mayor Melton, to dedicate that new, when we moved to 10%, we dedicated that 1 penny to the schools. But that means, in comparison to all the other cities in Jefferson County, Trussville has been operating off 75% of its biggest revenue generator, which is sales tax. That accounts for 2/3 of our general fund, doesn't it?
Yes, about 63, 64%.
So we've been operating with one hand tied behind the rack, so to speak.
And done really
Now,
well.
and let's not ignore that 1 cent allowed us to leave Jefferson County schools with about $14 or $15 million. Huge advantage when you're starting a school system from scratch. It has, I mean, we're working on it right. We're working on another story about how well Trussville City Schools are performing almost on a weekly basis, because they're breaking their own records at this point.
It's
So
amazing.
that 20-year gamble, I think we would all agree, has paid off.
Yes.
But you've had to operate with one arm behind your back.
Yes.
You're saying you're committed to keeping that penny going to schools. Hard to argue that we haven't gotten a lot of bang for our buck on that. But where does additional revenue come? Because Trussville is the fastest growing city in Jefferson County. We got to make that 25% up somewhere. Where
Right.
do you see that being made up?
And I know you're talking about cuts, but we got to look at revenue going forward,
Right.
because we're about to get into SSUT, and we know this is not a temporary thing. This is permanent.
No. The short term is the cuts, is the potential early retirement.
Right.
Those are your short terms to get balanced towards the end of the year. So the long term, so my plan is, I feel like, yes, Trussville's done a great job as a city. We've supported our schools. We have supported our schools well, like you say. We operate on 75% of our biggest revenue bringer-inner is sales tax, and we've got to change that narrative. So my plan is, I want to be able to have a person at first, economic developer, city man, whatever that title looks like, heavy on the economic development side, that brings in businesses, that recruits businesses. We need to be more on the business level, and I'm not talking about just retail. I'm talking about really good high-tier companies that have great paying jobs. Let's say people can work in Trussville and not have to leave Trussville to go to work. Those are long term, but I think that's something that we've been very blessed to people to come to us. Oh, let's go to Trussville. Well, that market's getting a lot more competitive. I'll go to the EDAA conferences, and it will break my heart that I won't get to go this year, but I'm not going because we're going to cut that from the budget right now. But I've learned so much from that group. It's Economic Development Association of Alabama. And it's all these economic developers that come together, they share their stories, their how you do, and then the real estate brokers come in and sit down and meet with you, what's a good fit for Trussville. That's valuable. We need that person, and the mayor has done a great job, and the council before us and the council, the current council. But there's only so many hours in the day, and it's none of ours expertise. So there are people out there that it is. So I think we're ready. Trussville is ready at 28, 29-ish thousand people to be really focusing on bringing businesses here, really good, in those few extra retail places that we would all love to have here in Trussville. You got to be recruiting them, and we just don't have that. And I think that long term is going to be where we can make up some of that money on just relying on sales tax, get that number of reliance down, get the business reliance monies up, and see how we start averaging out at that point in time. We've got to change the way we're doing business right now, because things are changing. SSUT. Who knew when we wrote the 2040 plan, which was a fantastic plan, we'd be needing to modify it pretty heavily in 5 years. We've already done a lot of what was in the plan, but who knew that something like an SSUT, online sales shopping, would be such an issue and get into your budget so much. So those are things we've got to look at, but my plan is to get that economic developer, if it's one person, get them to be out there, and that's just what they do, bringing jobs here and businesses here.
I'm torn as to whether we should talk about SSUT or something that I've asked every candidate was about a city manager. You know, is Trussville ready for that kind of position? And since you put that out there, you want to talk a little bit more about that, then we'll come back
let's
to
do that.
So that may not be something that everybody's familiar with. I mean, I've covered city council since I was in college, and so I am familiar with that kind of role. And so maybe explain, well, you've done a pretty good job of already explaining
Well, I can go on.
But yeah, so anything else
Sure.
there about that kind of position that maybe people need to understand?
Well, some municipalities will have a city manager that it's a full-time position, and their mayor is part-time and a little more ceremonial.
Right.
Yeah, grip
type.
and grin
Right.
type.
Absolutely.
Grip and grin.
I think we're
like
beyond
that.
that.
Okay.
I think we're way beyond that. I still think that mayor needs to be full-time because they have personnel and all other kinds of issues to deal with, to basically be the CEO of the company. I really want to call it more of an economic development department, but start with one person. You say department, and people are like, you're going to spend too much money, but I think that person will make up their salary in a very short period of time. But city manager, city planner, economic development, they, in my opinion, whichever title you want to give them, they would have to have heavy economic development. Heavy, because I think that's the piece that we're missing. So moving forward, I would love to see the city be able to make that hire fairly quickly and be able to get that person in position because their position would majorly generate money. Not all positions in the city generate money. You know, they are services that we give, which we need, which every person in this community deserves. But they don't necessarily make a lot of money based on the cost of personnel. And that's fine, but this particular position would. So like I said, working with EDAA, the mayor and I both joined and have been, I think this would be our 3rd year, and have just learned so much. And what you find out is some of the cities that, you've got that I-459 corridor. So they love a good Hoover, and they're starting to love a good Trussville because we're on opposite ends of the corridor. So it's far enough away that maybe, I won't even say any names, they're here in Hoover. Hey, I'd like to be in Trussville.
Yeah, what could be working there?
Yeah, you could benefit on
here.
both ends there.
100%, 100%. So even like the city of Coleman, they have a whole economic development department, and it is to bring in businesses and retail that we want to recruit in, but it's also to help. Could we be doing more things in the city? Like, could we do more like something celebrating the Cahaba River, festivals, something money makers? We've got the entertainment district, fantastic. Is there more that we can do with that? And I don't know. Those are avenues that somebody that has that skill set and that educational background to be able to go out there and help us. But I think we're ready for it, and I think we're ready for that position, and then I think the mayor's position needs to stay full-time for a while too. So yes, I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to kind of question the hybrid role of a city manager / economic developer. My experience has been city manager generally takes over all the administration of the city. That's pretty full-time. I wouldn't think you'd get
That's
a whole
why I said
lot
it would
of
need to
recruiting.
I really like economic developer
Yeah.
better.
Would you prioritize that over a city manager at this point?
Yes, because I think it 100% pays for itself. I really do.
Yeah, I get that. They could.
I think in time, you could roll it.
Their goal would be to bring in business, which you're right, would pay for them.
Right. It would pay for itself in time and probably fairly quickly. Like I said, most cities our size have that, and we have a fantastic chamber. I mean, they could work hand in hand, recruiting, and there's just a lot of opportunity there that I think the way we are set up, there's not time in the mayor's role to do that level of economic development recruiting at all.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of education and experience involved in that real specific
Very
role
much so.
that's needed too.
And I'm just here to tell you, I was on the Grow Trussville, which was an economic development committee, and then on TRA. That is such a corporate network that is operating on their own realm, in their own world. It's a lot. There's so much involved with that, and where companies want to locate, where they want to expand to,
and that's something else too. That while we're on that subject, I'm one of my liaisons is the Industrial Development Authority. We were a board, now we are an authority, which is our park, and then we have, TRA, we have planning and zoning, we have downtown buildings authority. We have a lot of boards that I feel like between the boards, I would love to see this economic development person almost be like, that's the head, and you're just better communicating. You're communicating what each one is doing.
So dealing directly with specific committees that would kind of fit into that mode.
They all go under, of course, everything's economic development. Even your schools are economic development, public safety, everything. People that if they want to invest if they want to invest their money in Trussville, that's economic development.
It's the first thing they're looking at.
It is. So I think having that person in and even maybe organizing our boards where there's just a little better communication between the actual boards themselves, and I think this person could be maybe a little bit better suited because they're all working for the same ultimate goal to bring businesses into Trussville. Right. I think that would be better suited for that person to kind of be over that. But those are ideas in my head that I would like to start.
Okay.
Y'all want to move over to the SSU?
Well, we might as well, because I think that's such a glaring thing, not just for Trussville, for every city in Alabama.
let's talk about the $3 million shortfall in budgeting, or actually in revenue coming in, which is what caused the budget to fall short. We know that virtually all of that amount of money is attributed to a decline in brick and mortar sales tax.
Yes.
That we after 10 years of increases. So and I tell people, let's be a little gracious here. When something runs one way for 10 years, you're not necessarily expecting it. But we'll get to that part as well. We had a $3 million decline in brick and mortar sales tax. We've talked about already the importance of sales tax to our general fund. That's 2/3 of it. So losing $3 million there obviously hurt and hit hard. We also looked very closely at SSUT. Now let's go back to 2019 when we got our first SSUT check, about the time you came on the council. And nobody in Alabama had ever gotten a sales tax check for online sales. We just lost out. Every government level just lost out. So the SSUT, the Simplified Seller's Use Tax, Alabama joined the group. We're able to put that in place. It's 8%. Every purchase made online is 8%. 4% goes to the state, which the state gets 4% of the brick and mortar sales tax. 2% goes to the county. The county gets 2% of the brick and mortar sales tax. So no cut for the county, no cut for the state of Alabama. They took their full piece of pie. Cities, and by the way, in Trussville's case, in Trussville, 3% is supposed to go to the
sharing
city.
their desserts.
1% is supposed to go to our schools. We only get 2% total from the state's formula. Here's I've got two concerns.
Okay.
I've got a lot of concerns, but I'm going to try to narrow it down. One thing Brandon and I talked about is 10 years ago, you never saw groceries listed among the online purchases. I mean, people went to the grocery store. Groceries is now the #1 purchased item online, okay?
And the easiest one to get to.
And we know exactly what kind of sales tax generator Winn-Dixie and Publix and Aldi and Fresh Value are in every city. Every family visits a grocery store every single week. Walmart may have bigger stuff, but you spending $150 in the grocery store every single week, come rain or shine. So my whole point here, Lisa, is there is no expert out there that says this is going to reverse, level off, or change. It is going to continue to go in the direction it's going. If we lost $3 million to our general fund because of brick and mortar now, SSUT becomes far more important. This is not a problem that's going to get worse. It's going to exacerbate. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse going down the road. I'm sorry, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. What's the answer there? I mean, that's your #1 revenue producer. So how do you replace those funds? What do you do with the SSUT? There's a district, to make matters worse, there's for the city sales tax, the 2 cents, there's a horrible distribution.
Oh, it's awful. It's based on population, in which we do better than some.
Yeah.
But
that assumes everybody in every city is spending the same amount of money. We just know it's not true.
Yeah.
What's your plan?
Well, first of all, we can't, as a city, do anything about SSUT other than it's going to have to be a legislature. It's going to have to come from the legislature. Now, I'm good friends with Danny Garrett and Shay Shelnut, and I've had conversations that we've got to fix it. Easy for me to say that if you order it and have it delivered in 35173, that's where that 2 cents needs to go.
Right.
Now, how that's applied and how they can take it. Now, like you said, 6 years ago, they made a big step. We never got a penny from online sales tax.
Everybody thought it was a godsend.
But every time I see a Kroger truck, and we don't even have a brick and mortar even remotely in this area, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's just more money going out. But it's not changing, and I'm guilty. I order online. I'm not condemning anybody that orders online.
Right.
It's the changing of the times, and cities have got to wake up and change right along with it. So what I said earlier, we got to figure out less reliance on sales tax. But we've also got to really push and probably lobby down in Montgomery. It's really going to take, you're going to have to get your big lobbying firms behind it. You probably have to get League of Municipalities behind it. I serve on that executive legislative committee for the League of Municipalities. we're just going to have to start pushing it, because Trussville's not the only one suffering from that. Most cities in the state of Alabama, based on the way we govern and we take money in, rely on sales tax, on retail sales tax, and it's changing. And so to me, the state's going to have to see that it's hurting, especially I think cities Trussville size. You know, you got your big cities, it's not hurting them as much. But I really think Trussville size, and they're trying to help the more rural, smaller towns, and I get that too. But it's all got to change. I think at first, when it came on in 2019, when the state signed on to the SSUT, they weren't 100% sure that your business, your small mom and pop shops could, I don't want to say figure that out, but could manage it. You know, it's going to be a little trickier for them. I think we're perfectly fine now. I think that with all the software and that we have, and most everybody has internet. You have to remember, I have a facility in Fayette, and we just got internet. If you can believe that, there are lots of pockets in the state of Alabama that don't. So I think we're ready for that, and we've just got to get with our legislators. It's got to happen. It's got to happen pretty soon. And even, you know, it's only based on 8 cents, and if it's brick and mortar, you know, we get 4 whole cents, but we at least need to get the 2.
And I know the city council didn't pass this. Montgomery passed
100%.
this. But why is it okay for the city to get their full cut, or the state to get their full cut, and the city only gets half of what they're doing? I mean, would you push for a prorated? It's 8% here, it's 10% brick and mortar. Why is that not at 8% not divided in the same percentages as the 10%?
I agree. Or at least, like I said, wherever it's ordered and delivered, that's who gets the sales tax.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most. If the state and the county.
And we're talking online sales. They know where they deliver it.
Yeah. Well, you got to put that in there.
Whose house they took it to.
So I think that's the most fair, fair and honest way. Where you order it and where it's delivered, that's where the sales tax revenue should go. And we just got to convince a lot of legislatures that that's the way that we need to go. And that's just going to be, you know, may have to be in Montgomery and being down there, and you know, we get some city mayors and city councilors. I'm president of Jefferson County Coalition Group, which is Jefferson County City Councilors. We get together, we collaborate, we talk about ideas, we talk about SSUT. We had BBA come out and do a workshop on that, on exactly what all this is, because a lot of us were just kind of, you know, all of a sudden you're affected by it, and oh, I better figure out exactly what this is, how it's funded, what's their thought process behind it, and how can we change it?
Is the state open to changing it? Yeah.
Well,
the legislatures I've talked to realize there's an issue.
It's an issue.
They know it's a problem, and they know something's got to be done.
And I think the biggest one is that last 2%, those last 2 cents. I really do. I think if they could work out where those 2 cents go to the municipality that it, in my opinion, belongs to, I think we'd all be a lot happier and wouldn't have to touch the state or the county's percentages.
I don't. Okay.
You don't have to agree with me.
I wouldn't let them off the hook that easy, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, I want baby steps.
I don't disagree with you. I do think just getting the distribution model right could be
let's
hugely helpful.
Just do this much right now.
Yeah,
let's get
quit
something
pretending
accomplished.
everybody in every city is spending the same amount of money. It's not true.
It's not true.
Everybody knows it's not true. And listen, I don't want to sound like a doomsdayer, but I've been digging into this very hard. I've gone through a PowerPoint that Mayor Maddox, Walt Maddox did in Tuscaloosa, and I've chastised the Big Ten mayors because they should have been doing this a year ago instead of trying to do their own money grab, which is what they pulled or tried to pull. But in all honesty, based on the trending I see and the numbers I see, the more successful cities are going to be hit hardest by this if it's not fixed. And I think if it's not fixed in 5 years, this is going to devastate the best cities in the state of Alabama. It's not just Trussville where this is hitting.
Tell you what, when I become mayor, we'll hit Montgomery. How about that?
I mean, it's going to. I mean,
I'm serious.
Unless by some miracle of God, people just stop buying offline. I don't see that coming.
No, it's not going to come.
I'm looking at a 20-year trend here, graphs of 20-year trend, and I see what has happened in the last 3 to 4 years. There's no way for it
not to hurt successful cities in Alabama.
And
Can't avoid it.
COVID teed it up. Yeah,
COVID
because then you
teed it
learned
up.
how to do everything
Well,
through
what's
an app.
interesting, obviously it jumped up during COVID because nobody's leaving the house, everybody's ordering everything. But then it dropped the year after COVID because people have been pent
Ready
up.
to get out.
But the slingshot after that is scary. And groceries going from non-factor to number one item,
Yeah.
I think every
Look at
mayor
Brandon.
that looks at that is going to turn blue and pass out.
Hey, I know.
100%.
See, and I've never gotten into the buying groceries online. I think I just have to be in the store and oh, this looks good for dinner, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Maybe I'm not that organized, but something that
So now y'all know who caused all that.
I didn't.
Not her, me. It's me. I did it.
Something that I didn't know with SSUT, it affects anything you order via an app. Like if you order your food at a local restaurant and through their app and you go pick it up,
Then you're paying the
you're
SSUT.
still paying
8%, not the 10.
SSUT, even though you're going to the brick and mortar.
Oh wow.
Which was that's a whole
I'm not
other
sure I
thing that
realized
most
that either.
most people
for all of
didn't-
us that are ordering Chick-fil-A through the app.
She does not like to go inside Walmart, but she doesn't mind the parking lot.
that was kind of like shocking
Yeah,
to me.
that is. I'm not.
I
Yeah.
think,
That,
wow.
that caught me off guard.
It's app based.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of
So
that.
for Sam's too.
Yes.
If you order it through an app and you pick it up,
I wonder
it
if
goes,
the scan and go counts.
Yeah.
It's through the app.
No, scan and go. You mean checking yourself out?
Yes.
That's not through the app.
Still-
You don't do it at the checkout center, you do it on the app. on
Oh,
your phone.
no, I
do.
haven't done that. Then I don't even know what you're
You
talking
never stop
about.
at the cash register. It's
Yeah.
all on your phone.
I bet it's the. Oh wow,
See,
that's
I'm a
really
little old
deflating.
school on that.
Yeah, that's gotta get
I
fixed.
think this leads to something else. Maybe educating the public is important. Letting them know
Absolutely.
where your dollars are going and where your dollars might not be going if you do certain things certain ways. Listen, I've had friends say, I don't shop at this store. I go to Springville because I don't like the one in Trussville. That's a personal decision. People have a right to make that decision. But sometimes they don't stop and think about, I've got 4 kids in Trussville City Schools, so maybe that wasn't the best idea.
Well, and it's better to shop online than going across town. We at least get something.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you go to Hoover and shop when you could buy it in Trussville, you're going to be better ordering it online. If you cannot get it in Trussville, don't leave the city to go buy it.
Right.
That's the worst.
Well, it is such a. I know it's really detailed for people to listen to, but honestly, I knew the differences in the amounts when we started, but when we started
Right.
gearing up and really got into the weeds of this issue, I don't think I realized how it was distributed. And I think most people don't
Yeah, the
realize the
distribution-
difference in distribution
Yeah.
and that it's a real problem that we need to be paying
It
attention
is.
to, and people need to be demanding that of
It
legislators.
is.
that
And
they're supposed to.
I'm just going to state my opinion. It was based entirely on laziness. And I'm talking
Well,
about
easy,
Montgomery.
whatever was easy
Yes,
to
it was
distribute.
a
Okay.
lazy
Well,
way to
it's
approach
just time to
it. But again,
fire it back up
Yeah.
again.
and you're
It's just
getting,
time to fix it.
you're talking about cities, counties, and the state who suddenly saw a windfall. They had gotten zero.
Yeah.
So when those checks started arriving, we had counties and cities that saw it as manna from heaven. 5 years later, when they start seeing the brick and mortar decline in tax collection, tax revenue, and they see that going up, and they start looking around and realizing we got the shaft on all of this compared to the county. And I will mention that when that passed, one of the big endorsers was the whatever association it is of counties, whatever Sonny Brassfield runs.
Yeah,
he's the county ALM basically.
Okay. Well,
Okay. Anything? Do you have an opinion on what we go to next?
I don't have an opinion on what we go to next, but
Okay.
I'm just looking at what's here, and what are you seeing?
Well, so let's talk about. Let's come back up to buying property. So this, and you can back up and give people information too if you want to. But you mentioned Glendale, waiting on a sale to work out there. You are waiting for the developer to come to the closing table, essentially for Service Road. For the next administration, for the next mayor, a lot of the times that y'all have reached out and bought these properties is to keep something. Well, like with Service Road, is to keep something from happening on the edge of Trussville that we didn't want to happen, honestly. And I, as a resident, was happy. I was happy when you bought the Service Road property to keep it from turning into apartments. And so I don't mind saying that. But in the future, until SSUT has been handled and all of those things, how does the mayor handle a situation where maybe the city can't buy us out of a problem anymore like that? Is it through planning and zoning changes and planning? How do you do that in the future?
Okay. Well, there is no, there's no magic wand to wave. When someone comes to you and they have a contract for a piece of property that's in the county for $5 million because they can get that for 500 plus. Now just remember, it could have been up to 750 apartments. Then that's hard to combat. But the answer to your question is, how do you try, and try is a big word, there's no perfect world, to combat that from happening again? First of all, you always need to keep your reserves up. So if it does happen, you've got that rainy day fund that you can fund something that needs to happen to protect the community from what you feel like, mayor and council, feel like could be detrimental in a large use of our services. So the overall plan that I would want to start is we talked about economic development. Well, along with economic development, you really need to know your property. So Trussville's 34, almost 35 square miles. Homewood is 7 to 8 square miles. Huge difference in amount of property. So we're pretty sprawling. We go into St. Clair County a little. So we've done the 2040 plan. It was great. It has a lot of great assets to it. Over 200 stakeholders worked. I know that you worked on that project. I'd love to see us pull that back out, bring stakeholders back in, some old, some new. We've changed a lot in 5, 6, 7 years, and then get a strategic plan done with, say, you can do a regional planning commission, or you can do others that's their niche, that's what they do, and actually plan out what we're going to do. What does Deerfoot Parkway look like? What do we want there? I think that would help as you have businesses coming in. I give a good example. So Husky Parkway in Deerfoot, and I voted no on all of these. Those are not places for houses, in my opinion. I don't think a house should overlook an interstate. I just don't. I would have liked to have seen commercial there, but we had someone came to us, and it passed, and that's fine. I voted no, and my constituent, my council persons voted yes, and that's fine. That's what makes it work. But had we maybe had a little bit more foresight and plan in what does that area look like, and we had someone in place, and I think this is the key part. We all know what we would like places, but we have someone in place that can go out and recruit. Okay, this is what we want right here on this piece of Deerfoot Parkway. Can we go out and recruit? Let's try to get that business to come here. Let's work with the state or whoever and try to help get us some infrastructure funding. Those type things. I just think you've got to have that bigger, broader strategic plan to be able to start. And then you've got an idea of what now. If it's Jefferson County property, if it's City of Birmingham, which we rarely have a City of Birmingham issue, but county is a different story. You just need to make sure you do have reserves, because that's very important when that does come up, and it will, that you're prepared for that. But I think moving forward in other pockets of our community, we need to be more aligned in what we think and we want to go in that particular space and what that looks like, what the community would like to see. It may not be an exact store, but this is going to be your commercial. This is where we're going to focus on some housing. This is where we're going to do a little more parks and rec. What bugs me is we don't have a park on the opposite side of the railroad, on the south side of the railroad. I mean, there's just no growth there. And I know it's because we have the railroad, but I would like to see that happen as well. There's some pockets there that we could do some things, and I just think that takes a whole overall plan and lay it out, and I think it would help in planning and zoning, that they want to do more planning. I was at a planning and zoning meeting last week, And that was a topic of discussion, that instead of what's just brought to them, they'd like to be a part of the process of the planning.
Forecasting.
Yes, forecasting.
That makes a lot of sense.
Of the actual planning of it. And that's what I said. I said, that makes a ton of sense. And I see the need for that and have seen it. And I just think we've got to get all that aligned. And it's got to start where we have that person that, first of all, knows how to do it. We're bringing in consultants and being able to put that whole package together. Will it be perfect? No. But it's a plan and it's a start. And I think with us moving forward, we've got to have that and make sure we're not ever in a situation where we grow population-wise. From 2000 to 2020, according to the League of Municipalities, we grew 83%. We can't do that again. That we're still playing catch up, and will play catch up on our infrastructure with roads and schools and first responders. You know, we just added our 4th fire station, which if you haven't been there, it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm so proud that we have that. It's greater serves our community, but we're still playing catch up from that huge, massive amount of growth, and I think that that's caught everybody obviously flat-footed. I just think we just had to really get that comprehensive plan that's going to cover all 35 square miles of Trussville. What does that look like? And get a person in place that they just start working that, and we stick to that plan with stakeholders plus professionals. And I think that's the best way to handle that.
Can I follow that?
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned twice we need to get our reserves up. And again, I like to do these little tutorials for the audience. And we need to understand first and foremost, much of city, county finances, tax structure, revenue structures, all based on a 1901 state constitution, which was designed not to let counties and cities do whatever they wanted to do. It was designed to move the power to Montgomery, and everybody had to come through Montgomery. They basically made themselves kings and queens in 1901 over the state of Alabama. As you know, because you have been in office for 4 years now, one of the very few things the city council has complete control over, because if you want to raise property taxes, who you have to go ask?
Montgomery.
Well, they've got to approve the vote.
Approve it, right.
Then the citizens get to make the decision, not the
100%.
council. Sales tax has been one thing that councils in Alabama can do to raise revenue when they need to, which explains why Alabama has the highest sales taxes
100%.
in the country.
What?
But we also have the lowest property taxes in the country.
Yes.
So it's always a give and take. My question is this. You mentioned twice having reserves up. I agree with that. Anytime you've got an economy-dependent revenue system, which is what we have in the city of Trussville, it's completely dependent on the economy, because the sales taxes, as we mentioned multiple times, that's 2/3.
Things are good. People are shopping.
That's right. So here's where I get this. That's a long question for a short answer. What do you think the reserve should be that the city keeps in place in case of an emergency? What figure would you put on that?
Well, you know, idealistically, you were supposed to have 3 months worth of reserves.
Well, isn't that what they ask the schools to have? 3 months operating?
3 months, yes. In the schools, I think, yeah, they have at least that.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Jim Kirkland exceeds that.
Yes, Jim's done a fantastic job.
Jim's about the best CFO in education in the state of Alabama.
He's going to need to buy me a cup of coffee. No, I'm just kidding. So we do. I would love to see us have 5. When I first came on, we were pretty close to it. We were we sat very well.
We also know now we were counting some of the school money we were holding for them, or at least auditors were counting that to the city favor.
Yeah.
And the city's going, it's not our money.
No.
They counted it anyway.
Well, and that goes to that credit rating,
Yes.
which, you know, we were floored. We got the AA+, which was fantastic, but they measured it on something they shouldn't have measured it, and then when we didn't have that fund, then they measured it.
Then they hit you
a totally
for
different
it.
way. And I'm like, wait, you can't do it both ways.
When your newspaper publisher, who ain't the brightest guy in the world, can read what Standard & Poor's said and read the verbiage and go, none of that's true, because we've covered all this. It's pretty bad if I can figure it out.
Yeah. But AA is still very, very good. We did just, the Loop Road
Right.
that we're building, we did just do a RFP to our local banks to see, for financing. And I mean, we got unbelievable bids back on that, and because people wanted to do business with Trussville. So I think it's like 3.4, something like that percent, which is incredibly low. So
The
we are.
anticipation was over 4%.
Yeah.
That's what everybody thought.
Right, and it came in under. And we're not in dire straits. I don't care what anybody is saying. We are not in dire straits. Did we hit a bump in the road? Did a perfect storm happen on, financing, inflation and the buying of property and SSUT? Absolutely. But we're not in dire straits, and we're going to get it back. And like I say, we've got a new finance director. I think he's 12. I mean, he's like crazy young. But I mean, he is sharp.
He's good at math.
Oh, he's very good. And just a new energy there. So excited about that we took that road very quickly and addressed a situation that we needed to address on that.
I agree with that, and I think that's missed on a lot of people. $3 million shortfall on budget, that's a lot of money, but that's manageable. That can be controlled, which is why I put so much emphasis on SSUT, which we can't really control. We got to have some help there. And what is a manageable problem today, I do not believe will be manageable in 4 to 5 years. So I think that's just critical that cities are able to come together and get Montgomery to listen.
I think so too. And I think, you're always better in numbers. And if we can get our local municipalities to get involved, that it's affecting people like Trussville size that shop, a lot of people that shop online.
I promise you, when you dig, the more successful the city, the more hurt they're going to feel.
100%.
It's scary to see. It'll be the most affected first. It'll affect everybody eventually, but the most affected first will be the biggest and best cities in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
That's not where anybody wants to be.
But it's going to force us to change the way, and we're limited. We property taxes have to be voted on, and the community spoke on that one.
Yeah.
So we have, we're not doing that, so we have to. It's going to be creative for sure.
I appreciate our great granddaddies putting us in that position. But, do you know what the city's? And I know it changes from month to month. Things come in, things go out. But could you put a dollar figure on about a month's operating expenses, about what that figure would look like?
Well, we spend about 49 million, so divide that by 12. So.
Okay, so about $4 million a month. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to talk? We need to talk about some issues, school system in the city.
Yeah.
But do we want to touch on garbage fees at all? The city, as the council, y'all backed up a little bit from.
We've removed it from the agenda.
Yeah. So
is that being pushed past election? Do you see that coming back up
are you kicking the can down the road, or do you really think the city will be able to find a way to continue to pay those fees?
My goal is that we can figure out a way to pay those fees. So what we approved for the mayor to do back, I guess, a month ago was to go into negotiations. We had to approve that, so he could at least get the figures.
Yeah, we couldn't even get a number unless
he gets to go and negotiate. So I think that was lost in some communication, that we voted for him to go. We're going to do this garbage fee.
Right.
Yeah, it's done, and that's not the case at all. And so we try to. And that's another thing we're going to work on, is better communication. But sometimes it's hard to communicate those things. Anyway, we did vote for the mayor to go into negotiations to at least see what that would look like. Of course, we heard from our constituents. We heard from the community. It was definitely a negative thing, and I get that. Of course, I'm sure you've heard this, and most everybody has. But for those that haven't, when we did the sales tax, in 2002. And that promise was made that we will pay for garbage, because prior to that, when I first moved to Trussville, we paid for garbage. So prior to that, no, you didn't pay, you paid for garbage. Anyway, so that was the promise made and promise kept. So in 2002, raised the sales tax up to 10%, started paying garbage. Well, the garbage was $500,000 then. So we're trending right now 2.6 to 2.7 million a year now. So tremendous growth in 23 years, and go back to your 75% of our sales tax that we get in, we still got that hand tied behind our back.
That's right.
So if you look at it from that lens, it's like we've really done an amazing job overall. But
we really have, and I know these are political interviews, but I don't want that lost on our audience. This city has done amazing things.
We really have.
And not under the best of financial situations.
Right. So the garbage fee, I sat down with the mayor and I told the mayor, I said, I just can't be behind this. I think it's obviously a very hot topic. It's the part that probably bothered me the most is whether And I know you can't base everything on income, and we had a plan to try and people that could be exempt, so people that are definitely on limited income, that kind of thing. But if you had a $50,000 income or you had a $250,000 income, you paid the same fee. Or if you had, 3 garbage cans, it just I don't know. I didn't feel comfortable with it. So I told the mayor that I did not feel comfortable with it. I'd made a statement online that expressed that as well. I did not want that to be a surprise.
You did vote for the mayor to go
into negotiations because you had to at least get, the rest of the city council needed those numbers as well, and the community needed those numbers. So if we voted no for him to not go, then you wouldn't even have anything to work with. So that would not be smart on anyone's behalf. So I hate that got miscommunicated, but I didn't vote for one thing and then turn around and pull it the other way. So we did decide to pull it from the agenda. As far as I'm concerned, it needs to probably stay there, and then let's figure out how we
stay off the agenda.
Stay off the agenda. Yeah.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. Sorry, stay off the agenda. Just because the people spoke and they spoke loudly, and that is part of our job, is to listen to them. We've got to be creative, and I will say, we've got to march through everything that we can go through, and like things I've already mentioned to you, and figure out the numbers. Will garbage be free forever? I would never make that promise, because I don't think you should ever make promises like that, because economies change, and like you say, the way the state of Alabama functions, how you basically are forced to rely on retail tax, and that's changing as we know it. It just puts municipalities in a bad space. I don't ever want to do it, but I don't think anyone should ever promise you won't ever do that, just because you really don't know 25 years later what that economy is going to look like.
Well, in hindsight, wouldn't it have been interesting if Mayor Melton that did that, which was an amazing thing to do, we've already discussed that, like if he had said, okay, after 20 years...
Put a sunset clause on it.
Put a sunset clause on it. Like, wouldn't have...
Yeah.
You can't put a sunset clause on something that's not official. It was never official.
It would have had to have been official.
Yeah, it was a promise of a guy sitting in a chair that encumbered all future administrations.
Right.
In some people's mind, it should have encumbered. There was, and y'all have gone back and read it, there was nothing in there that dedicated that to pay for garbage collection. There's nothing in our ad valorem that is dedicated to garbage collection. This was,
people keep saying that. That's not true.
It's not true.
And there's mistruths out there on Facebook.
That one's not true.
A lie's a lie, and it's not true. But I had never lived in a city where my garbage was paid for.
Me neither.
Never in my life. I'd lived in, mostly in Tuscaloosa, but a few other cities, municipalities, never had garbage paid for. It delighted me to move into Trussville and find out, what, I don't have to pay that here?
Didn't you just look it up? 35 cities in Jefferson County.
35 cities.
5 of them pay garbage. Trussville is one.
Only 5 out of 35 cities is the municipality paying for residents' garbage pickup. I will say, we're one of those 5. Trussville's one of those 5. All 4 are paying higher millage property taxes than we are. So these are realities. And residents, I get upset all the time, and quite often about stuff I don't really fully understand. But I think it is pretty important to actually understand what's going on around you. If you want to hold your city to a standard, you kind of need to understand the standard.
Right. Right.
What you got? I don't have a really follow-up on that because I
don't either. I think we're done there. Let's talk about the city's relationship with our school system, which is strong. Like you've talked about, the city's support of the school system. How reasonable is it, or is it reasonable to think that the city can still be a contributor to Trussville having a 4th elementary school at some point?
Yeah, what role could the city play in that?
That's a better way to ask it.
Well, I think
understanding that the city has provided property many times for new schools, so what do you see?
And I see us continuing that. In the past we've provided the schools, and the cities. The city provided the property, and the schools provided the building. Of course, the city helped the schools out in the beginning because the schools didn't have any credit rates.
That's right.
They were brand new. So
the bond issue for Trussville
you at Trussville High School is a city bond issue.
Correct.
Paid
And
for with school money, but
right, paid for through that.
but the city had to go get the loan.
Right, absolutely, because you had to. You couldn't expect
Well,
a brand
they
new.
were only 1 year old. You're not going to give a 1 year old a loan.
No, they
course they
can't
did a
work and
cosign.
pay it
But
off.
now they're 20. So
Yeah, now they're 20. Get a job.
That's right. That's right. So I see us continuing the same thing. Now, we've got to find a better piece of property that is not so expensive to develop. So, like I said, Glendale was idealistic when, you had other people at the table, although it was kind of counterintuitive because then you were going to put 500 homes there. So then you were going to fill up that new elementary school. So it had some mixed messaging in on that as well.
And haven't Cahaba and Magnolia proven that back off the beaten path is good for schools?
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
of course, Payne's sitting on Highway 11, but that's 3 of the top 20 elementary schools in the entire state.
I know.
We can put them anywhere and be successful.
And kudos to Payne, Dr. Lossbite, who just retired this year. Just an excellent job managing that. I call it the big old cruise ship. 1,350 kids or more by now. I mean, it's the biggest school, elementary school in the state of Alabama by over 300 students, and it can't continue. So yes, we'll continue working with the schools however we can. We're going to be on a lean budget this year. Great time to run for mayor, right? When the budget's super lean, but that's okay. We can do it. So we will continue to work with the schools. We have to. I mean, that's just the commitment that we made when we started this school system in '05.
And I don't want to speak for Brandon, but I think what we're asking is specifically, what do you see? I mean, we need a new elementary school. What do you see the city's role in specifically in the times we're in on that?
We've got to find property. We've got to find the property to put that. It needs to be on the north end side of town. We have a property address that we'd love for that person to donate it. That would be fantastic. Don't know that will happen, but we've got to be very aggressive on locating that piece of property. Figuring out obviously the funding for that. I will say this, and we'll go back to finances a little bit. So we're constitutionally bound to be 20% or less of our assessed value as far as debt is concerned.
Right.
So we are well below that 20%.
Do you know what percentage we are?
Well, I want to say I'm not going to guess because I don't know the exact percentage, but we're like 659 million-ish assessed value in our, got this right here actually, and our indebtedness is 97 million.
Okay.
So I brought it so I wouldn't misspeak. So we are below that, and that will probably need to be our next big purchase, is that property, because it'll take 3+ years to get it built. It's got to be on that end of town. It doesn't necessarily have to be out as far as Glendale. Maybe there's something on Deerfoot. I think that kind of that corridor, originally that was going to be the educational corridor through the 2040 plan was on Husky Parkway.
Right.
So we've got to continue to look we got to address and purchase property. If you want a direct answer, that's what I think the first step is. Find that piece of property, get it purchased, and then start moving forward on how you're going to get that school building built. Is there any opportunity to work through the state? I don't know, but definitely have to explore all of those avenues.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had talked about the reason he kind of probably spoke out for me, because in the other interviews I just pointed out that even though I'm a Cahaba parent, and that's an amazing school, and I know Payne's an amazing school too, I just don't feel like they're getting a fair, the same experience, logistically with the school.
It is
it's
different
It's
experience.
just so overcrowded.
When everybody wants to
it's
walk
just-
their child to school.
Yeah,
I mean,
and not even that, but just getting in and out of that school for
the congestion.
assemblies
The time
and
parents
car
stand in line,
line.
I
And
think
just
it's
the daily
it's
life
size
of a parent.
more than it is location.
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
It's
yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
just size.
It's just
we,
giant.
And we pointed out in the other interviews,
And they do
point
an
out again,
amazing job.
We got 3 of the best elementary schools in Alabama. So I don't care if your kid's in Payne or Cahaba or Magnolia.
Absolutely.
They are getting the
Yeah,
best
they
this
are.
state has to offer in terms of education. But to Brandon's point, a parent with a kid in a 1,300 student school is not seeing the same experience of a parent with a kid in a 600 student student.
I agree with you.
And they've all performed. They've all worked well.
Oh yeah, but just the logistics.
But I think the personal thing we've been able to do with the smaller student bodies
And remember, Paint started off with a smaller student body.
Yeah. Well,
When
it was
we
two
first
schools.
built those two
It was an
schools,
elementary
you know.
school,
Two schools.
primary.
Yeah.
and,
Well, no, I'm talking about when we added Magnolia and Cahaba, Payne's population, student
dropped back
enrollment
down
dropped down.
but to
therefore,
800,
yeah,
yeah.
but therefore, a couple of years, they were kind of feeling the Magnolia, Cahaba
But it
effect.
just exploded again.
Next thing they know, they're like, "Oh, we're a mega school again." And
Well, I know.
I just. I
Well,
think
because
most-
everybody wants to move to Trussville, and that's where
It-
all
it
the
is,
new
and-
growth was
Yeah.
that direction. But
I
I
don't
will
think
say
that's going
this:
to change.
it's
by the way.
probably not. I don't see us, and I hope there again through planning and zoning and through more planning across the entire community is building huge neighborhoods again. Not right now. Little small. You can't stop growth. I think that's a disaster. I think that's going completely backwards. But small pockets,
If
smaller.
you stop it, you may not start it
You
again.
won't start it again, 100%. So little smaller pockets of neighborhoods are good because a lot of people want to come to your community because they want to buy a brand new house.
Right.
And so you've got to at least have that option. But to go back to our 3 fantastic elementary schools, they all got A's. All 5 of our schools got A's on the state report card, which is huge. And the niche report just came out.
Only a handful of districts statewide got that.
Yes. And out of the state, we came in from niche, which is a pretty high standard. And then they kind of, I think there's some charter schools in that as well.
Niche.
Niche. Oh. Well, tougher. Okay, I won't
don't
get off
go
on
there.
I'm too
Go ahead and make
nerdy
your-
on that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
go
way
ahead and
too
make your
nerdy
point.
on it.
that. Tougher.
We're better than Niche says, I'll say that.
Well, I do too, but that's what I'm saying. We came in as number 8
Yeah.
out of 141.
Yeah.
That's excellent. I think we're much higher
We're
than
5.
that. We're 5. We're 5. And on that,
I mean,
and
seriously,
on that
part of their
note,
formula is something that no school system can control,
Right.
and it works against us.
It does
We're
work against
easily
us.
5.
Yeah. And from that, we are right up there in that top 5.
Yes, we are.
The whole state, but yet our property taxes are the lowest of I'm not 100%, but I know at least 3 or 4 of those above us. And I know one particular municipality spends twice as much per pupil based on what they can get in for property taxes on there, and we're right up there with them. So I say this a lot, and
And their millage is higher than one mill there is higher than one mill here.
because their home value is higher. And
Yes.
guess why their home value is higher?
Schools.
Because their schools are really
schools are
great.
good,
And
yeah.
that's why ours have gone up.
And
Yeah.
we've had the
It's a
same
circle.
impact here, but
Yeah.
I don't think sometimes the citizen stops to realize, I paid a little more in taxes, but I didn't think this house would be worth this today.
No, but I say to a lot of people, Trussville is a bargain.
It is.
It
I
is a
agree with
bargain.
that.
If you want to come to a city that has a fantastic school system, that your property values are raising every year, then
We have families in Trussville that looked in other communities, and after considering everything, and they'll tell you that, they're out there listening right now, this was the best bang for the buck.
Absolutely.
And
I
that's
get
why they
that all
settled
the
here.
time.
Yeah.
They're like, especially if they come from out of state.
Right.
If they come from out of state, of course, they're not used to property taxes being so low in the entire state. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe the size house. I have a friend that she came from Chicago and she bought in Carrington, and she has a beautiful home on this spacious lot. She said, I could have never gotten this in Chicago. It would have been, $3 million
Yeah.
in
Right.
Chicago. And so those kind of things. Do I want to totally go out and change all that? No, but I want everyone, I want to communicate how well we do on the budget that we have per pupil, the quality of education, arts, athletics, and academics, what a great job we do on all 3 for half of what some municipalities that are 20 minutes away do with their students. So kudos to Trussville City Schools.
Amen.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
You ready? Saving the best for last?
Well,
what could this be?
Well, no, that's just
Well, I mean, we've only
no.
been butting heads over it for 5 years, Lisa. What do you think it's going to be?
This one's yours. You're up, man.
Oh, Lord,
This is
I
your
didn't drink
question.
water on this.
It's your question.
Lisa Bright,
Yes, sir.
I think we agree that the most important thing Trussville City Schools has going for them is an appointed school board. It removes, and we all know because we've seen the reality of it, we've lived it for 20 years. Even with that, there are politics involved. I think we could all agree we've seen it, and that's just kind of the way cities work. But I think you agree with me that one of the most important things is preserving an appointed school board.
100%.
And I suspect, I don't know how many candidates, but I think there are one or two that are probably going to talk about an elected school board as we get into the election. And we get full swing into that a week from, what's today, Thursday? A week from yesterday. We are,
Yeah.
it's closed, it's finals.
Qualifications next Tuesday
In other words,
at 5
it's
o'clock.
Away we go.
On like a chicken bone.
And you and I, first of all, let me say, I appreciate this because you have come in here 2 or 3 times over the last few years and opened yourself up to this conversation when it would have been a whole lot easier for you to say, I'm busy that day. But to your credit, you've never backed away from this. You've always been open to having a conversation about it. I appreciate that, okay? But you and I have a fundamental disagreement on the appointment process.
Okay.
And again, too many times I think personalities have gotten involved in this, and I know you agree with this. It's not about personalities. We've got a good board. We've got good people on that board. So my issue has really been the process that I would prefer to see something a little more open, a little more transparent through the process. And by that, I think the council, and I think there's a terminology that you and I have probably butted heads with as well, because you do feel it's transparent, because you've explained the process multiple times to the community. You've never held back from that. But when I talk about transparency, I'm talking about the community being able to see the process work as it's working. You mentioned earlier, and I agree with you, one of the most difficult things we faced in the last 5 years was watching our community implode over the schools. And it's painful because we know how good those schools are. We know how good the people are in those schools. And we know how supportive our community has been. But do you feel like that maybe when people go, when a board member, whether it's a new one or a sitting one, goes through a process where nobody really knows who the board member is going to be till the council votes on it? Are we building kind of are we creating a scenario where that board member kind of feels like it's fine for everything to be behind the scenes? You mentioned the Death Note book that triggered all this with Dr. Neal and with Mr. Salem. But what you'll remember, what we remember, is that it more than it being about the Death Note book, and the reason the community kind of imploded is it just threw the dam open. And kind of everything flooded out. We heard it from parents. I was at both of those meetings. We live streamed them, watching you through some of those meetings. And I've talked to council members, said, no, I didn't go to the school board. I'd already had enough the week before, but I watched it. Yeah. So it kind of just opened a dam of feelings, pent-up frustrations with parents. Are you still comfortable with that process? Do you see adjustments that could be made there that you think would give the community more confidence in sticking with an appointed board? Where are you on it now? I know where you've been on the past, but where do you stand now?
Well, and I appreciate we could go back and forth on that. We don't always agree on things, and that's healthy. You don't want to constantly agree because you don't learn.
We've never walked out enemies. No,
and you don't learn anything if someone's always agreeing with you. So when I came on in council in 2020, green.
And that's kind of the key. I'm glad you went, because that problem was there before you ever ran for council. It had been a big issue for years that every board member got reappointed if they wanted to.
Right.
So go back to you. You come in 5 years ago.
Came in 5 years ago, and the mayor assigned me to the schools, which I'm so grateful that he did. I have thoroughly enjoyed serving in that capacity as the liaison. So listen to how the appointment process had gone. It had changed
every year.
Yeah, multiple times.
We covered them every year.
Yeah. So my plan, I'm green, very green, is to, let's make this as consistent and as open as what I'm hearing we've done in the past, and let's just get a true defined process. So we assembled a board that was going to be similar, almost the same, but those positions would change. So, mayor and liaison would not change. But then you would have your BOE president or representative from the board. You would have HR, so we make sure we ask the correct questions, that we ask the exact same questions to every candidate to not get into any trouble there. And then you had one more representative from the council. So you had 2 council members, a mayor, an HR, and a school board representative, not superintendent, but a board. So we would send out, we'd started in January. First of all, we would announce that we take board applications for all year. So starting February 1, and we would close it out January 31st. So you could apply all year long for the school board. We would gather those in February, go through the resumes. As a group, we would meet, and I don't want to say the word scale. I got in a little bit of trouble for saying scale, but we would just go through them and see maybe how much that person had been involved in the community, different things, and we would do a 1 through 5, and wherever that natural break was, is the top, we would interview, and we would, I made personal phone calls to everyone that I didn't want. One year, I think somebody got like an email, or they just didn't even know it till it came out in the Tribune, and I thought that's not right. We've got to make sure that we thank these people in person, or not in person, on the phone, for your time. Thank you for applying. Thank you for coming. All that. So we go through that, do the interviews, and then present to the council who we feel like, after the interview process, who we feel like is the best candidate moving forward. So where you and I have disagreed is doing those interviews public in front of. My concern there again, as a brand new city councilor, and I wanted to make sure I started a process. I never think you can start something and keep it the same way the entire time. That's kind of closed-minded thinking. There's always room for growth. So we've done it the same way almost for 5 years. But one thing we have added is we sent the names to the Tribune this year. Names, resumes with all the personal information redacted on it, so we don't ever want to. Made sure everybody that applied was, knew that was going to be sent to the media. And that was a new step for us. We had not done that in the past. I think it's a good step.
And you notified each of those applicants.
Absolutely.
And gave them the chance to withdraw their name before you gave it to us.
And what we did, the reason why we did that.
Did anybody pull their name?
No, I know. But the reason.
Oh, jeez.
The reason that I called is that we did not have that on our website.
Right, that's right.
So on our website, it did not say that you're filling out this application.
You
It could
did
be
the right
released
thing to
immediately.
call.
So I thought,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to call each and every applicant and make sure that they are 100% fine with their names,
See,
everything.
I know.
And I do get that. And do I think that it can't be morphed in the future? Yes. Am I concerned with some people maybe not wanting to apply because they don't want to be in that position of? I think if you ever went with public interviews, it would have to be. I would have a problem if someone was heckling behind me. I just don't think that's professional.
Shouldn't happen. They should be removed from the meeting.
It shouldn't happen. There was a little bit of that when Dr. Martin interviewed, and it shouldn't happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I was there. Did not pick up on that. We're going to have to talk with this.
You just want to. You want people. You want the people that want to serve to be treated with the utmost respect, and I think that's been something that I felt like we would, if we did not have the interviews in public. I think we did it one time, and it may have been Dr. Ward's.
It was
Dr. Ward's first term that he came in, and I was not there, so from what I heard,
That was 9 years ago.
It did not go well.
I disagree with that completely.
Okay, well, and that's fine.
And you, again, you're relying on what somebody shared with you about it, and views could be different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is it going to stay this way forever? No, but it was a great start to get it organized. Well, I feel like, and you said yourself, we have a great board. We've appointed, because of our 5th year, we've appointed all 5 board members. And I think they've done an excellent job.
Only council that's had that opportunity,
Ever, because we got the extra year through the legislature to get us off the presidential election. So that's pretty unusual, and I think us as a whole, council and mayor, take pride in being able to do that and being successful in getting good community leaders in those roles. I will say one thing that we did add, people, and just so you know that we did listen and try to include.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. You're right.
Okay, so we did ask for questions one year. We
Year
said,
before last.
Yes, we
Just
said
a year ago.
people wanted to know what questions we were going to ask our board members, and of course, our HR director, she does a fantastic list. I mean, it's just fair. We ask the same questions to every candidate. Do not differ. Even if you are a returning board member, you're going to sit through an interview. I got a little bit of grief on that. I thought, I'm sorry. They're going to. It's a good leadership role.
That's one of the changes you did implement 5 years ago, is that even sitting board members would re-interview.
You would reapply, you would sit through an interview, the same process as if Brandon applied. It would be the exact same process. And that got a little bit of rub, not from anybody applying. But I don't think we need to do that. And I thought, no, I think we do. And it's turned out great. Have not had any issue.
Would you expect them to have an advantage? They've just served for 5 years.
Well, they have the experience,
Sure.
100%.
Sure.
But we did take the questions. So we said, okay, send us your questions. We want to be able to include those in. Zero questions were sent.
Which I didn't like, but you're right. That's what happened.
We did, and we did it at a council meeting. I think it was even in a Tribune article.
You specifically reached out and asked me to put it in an article. And we did that.
And we
didn't even submit one question.
Shame on you, Scott.
Again,
how did I not submit a question?
I didn't know what questions were being asked, so I didn't have any recommendations or suggestions.
And we should go back to that. We should go back to that and say, now that maybe maybe it wasn't heard, but I felt like we did the best we could to get that word out there. So the answer to your question is, yes, I think all things can change, because nothing stays the same forever. We all have to morph into, we have new societies, we have new technology. You can't be too hyper-focused on keeping it the same way forever and ever, but I will always be protective of the people that are wanting to apply to school board and make sure we're getting the best fit, and I don't want anything to be a deterrent. That it would, I don't know, but that's maybe the protection as a new city councilor coming in, and to me it was a really big role, and I took it extremely seriously.
You did.
And wanted to make sure it was done as professional as I possibly could, because it was a new role, never done this before. And the whole city council thing is like you just think you know what you're getting into when you get into city council. And you really don't have a clue. You have the basics, but there's so much to know and so much to learn.
I think even the people that come in knowing there's going to be a learning curve are kind of shocked when they see how steep it is.
Yeah, the curve is really
it is
curvy.
such a layered job.
It is, but it's such a rewarding job.
It is.
Even when we have bad times, whew, I learned a lot from that one. I probably shouldn't go that direction next time. But if you don't ever have the bad times, you don't ever move forward, right? So I just think that role of being involved in the city, learning the ways of the city, learning the people better. I have met so many fantastic people in the community of Trussville. That sets you up to be a good mayor.
Right.
And I just think you got to have that. You got to know some city business. You got to be willing to learn that, because it's a lot. And then being mayor is going to be even a lot more. But at least you've got a basis there of general knowledge and understanding of how departments work. We laugh. So when we came in, Ben and Jamie and I came in as 3 new city councilors. So it was the mayor and city clerk. We didn't have an HR, we didn't have HR department, we didn't have a finance department. So the mayor had to kind of morph and start that, and getting those departments going. And it's time to morph again with this economic development piece is to me the next more. But we went to our city council training. And of course, I love Lynn Porter to death. Didn't get to know her very long. She wasn't with the city very long after I came on.
We miss her.
But her training was 90 PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
At one sitting, we're like, oh, I cannot possibly absorb all of this information at all. And so I've already put Dan Weinrib on call. I said, okay, now look, if I become mayor, and when I become mayor, we are going to do city council training like the way I would have appreciated it being done. Like, I didn't know who the department heads, unless I met with them prior to the election, which I did meet with several by being elected to city council. I didn't really know what roles some of the departments played. And that's so key. That would really cut out a lot of guesswork as you're moving into that position of city council, because your city council, typically you have a full-time job as well. Right. So city council is your next full-time job. If you work it, well, definitely the way that I've worked it. But I just think that role is so important, and we laugh about it because we've learned so much, but it would have hopefully been a little easier had we had more of interaction between your department heads and what they do. And so just moving forward, that's a mental note to me that I'll make sure. 90 PowerPoint slides. It was interesting.
Well, I appreciate you dealing with that yet again, because we have had multiple conversations, and most of them in front of a camera about this stuff.
That's fine.
And I want to kind of defend one of the things you said, in that the board appointment process should be and has been a bit of a learning process for us too. Okay, if I'm going to make this the pet peeve of the Trussville Tribune, then the Trussville Tribune needs to make sure we're doing everything we can to make that process the best it can be. One of the things we discovered years ago, Erica Thomas was still here, and the mayor said, we only got one appointment. Well, we only got one application for school board publication. And so Erica and I talked, and she said, well, I reported it. It was in one of our council stories. Actually,
it was buried in another. It was within
like
the whole
in the council story. But
like
actually, what happened was the mayor said, we don't have any applicants, and we were 9 days from closing applications. And so
maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah, and Erica and I talked about it. I said, what happened? And so she checked, and she had reported it, and it was in a council story, which a lot of people read headlines anyway, and then if you do read the story, you're looking for your highlights. School board appointment may not be something that's sexy enough to get your attention. So Erica immediately turned around and wrote a standalone story that we were accepting board applications. By the time it closed, you had 9.
Yeah.
So we got 9 applications in 9 days when we did our job. And so we had to get better at doing our job. The other thing is, when we learned this with Chris last year, we get new editors in and out, and they don't know historically this has been an issue. They are covering the council meeting. They put it in the story like they should, but they don't know it needs to stand alone. So we've had to take responsibility here, and frankly, we've had to get better at what we do in that regard, so y'all have more to work with. But I will point out, because you know I'm going to, the concern, again, process, not people, one of the driving concerns that started this conversation long before I had the Tribune and long before you came on council, we didn't have anything to do with it, was that every board member that wanted to be appointed appeared to get reappointed. And you couldn't get in there unless the good old boy network let you in, was kind of the community feeling. You're right, y'all's council, your council, current council, is the first and only council that had an opportunity to reappoint or appoint every single board position by virtue of your 5-year term. Every board member that wanted to get reappointed got reappointed, and we picked new people for only the board members that said, no, I don't want to be reappointed. So the process, I do think, improved, but the results are exactly the same we've seen for 20 years. So
they are, and if you're asking if I believe in term limits, is that what you're asking? Or, I mean, because I will say this,
I think the voters determine term limits, but in an appointment, I could see that being a little different.
you could through boards. Yeah, you can serve 2 terms. I mean, that's something the council could do.
And even that's not been as big an issue for me as it has others.
But I will say this. So yes, we did appoint 3 brand new. So you had Sherry Tolbert, Kim DeShazo, and Jason Daniels. So those were 3 completely brand new people. Kim just went through her reappointment.
Kim's in her 2nd term. Y'all didn't appoint her.
She was already there.
That's right. She is her second term. So it's Sherry and Jason.
Mark Sims did
Mark
not
Sims,
go back.
right.
And
right.
Seems like one other didn't go back.
Stan.
Stan, that's right.
Stan Garrett.
Who
served,
had been trying to get off for about 10 years, by the way.
He
Stan was very
served
gracious
3 terms, and that was, and I think starting a school the way we started from scratch, I think some of that that just built continuity. Where now we didn't have what I would, sometimes if you look at term limits, it might be good if maybe you want to replace, you need to replace it. Maybe it's a little over their head and they're not cut out. We haven't had that.
Yeah, but you got the appointment process to take care of that a lot quicker than a term limit would do.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. But we were, to me, in my opinion, we were not faced with the need of this person's terrible at their job.
Right.
They're bringing that skill set of the years that they've served forward, just like city council. School board is a huge learning curve. Your first 2 to 3 years of understanding how all that truly works, what you can and you should, or different things. I didn't say that right. What you are allowed to do in a school board situation is a big learning curve.
It is.
So you need those 2 to 3 years just to get your head above water and really understand all of it.
And contributing to the tension over all of this was the fact that our school leadership, I'll just kind of put a blanket out there, had become very non-communicative with the community, with the local newspaper, and that, I think, is what led to a lot of that pent-up frustration.
100%.
And I will say to that, and I've said it from day one, to that board's credit, I saw 180. I mean, overnight 180, everything completely changed. Our phone started ringing. We don't have to go beg the school for information anymore. It just doesn't work that way anymore. We hear it first from the school now. It's kind of the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, communication is huge. That's another one of my platform issues on my campaign is we need to do a better job of communicating. Y'all do a good job of helping us with sharing our narrative, but we really need to be relying on ourselves more than we do you. Just like you said with that story that got down in the shuffle of the whole story, it needs to be a standalone. We've got to do more communication. One thing that I want to start as soon as I become mayor is a newsletter. And in that newsletter could be things like school board appointment coming up. Right. Here's the deadline. Right. Things that drops in your email, not an expensive thing to start. 2 cities that I've seen theirs are Vestavia and Mountain Brook, and they're just fantastic. They link with their Chamber of Commerce, so you've got all of those events coming up that are city events, and everything that people want to stay more informed. They can sign into it, they can sign out of it. We can have hard copies in our public buildings. I just think that's the first very small step that we need to take, and communication is huge. We started the Text My Gov, which is great. There are other software programs out there that we could grow that allow the community to know more of what's going on in the city. Because I was at a meeting yesterday at the Donut Club, and it was super fun. It was a group of like a garden club for a neighborhood. And as much as we felt like we communicated on the ad valorem tax, a couple of them were like, I didn't really know that's where it was going for. And I thought, wow, how could we have communicated that better? In your own mind, you're at meetings and you're doing tribunes, media's covering it. We've just got to figure that out. I think it's time to do some socials.
Well, citizens have to take initiative too.
100%, 100%. But I feel like there's always room for everybody to improve, right? So I think that the city itself can improve on those communications. And if it's something as small as a newsletter that drops in your email, I think that's a great first step.
I think all the communication better. Listen, I get frustrated with people who are commenting on our Facebook page about stuff we've reported on excessively, and they have no idea. And our newspaper's free. I mean, we don't have a paywall. We don't even charge you at the box. We can give it to you. I can't send Chris and Brandon over to read it to you. You got to read it.
If
where I draw the
only we
line.
could get paid
So,
for that.
funny
Chris.
story. So I was stuck in traffic on Highway 11. Imagine that, in front of your building. And I saw this a little bit older gentleman pull in the parking lot, get out of his car. He didn't park. He just pulled in, got out of his car, walked over to your newspaper box, opened it, got his newspaper. And it wasn't that it was eye-opening, but it was confirming that not everybody gets their news through social media.
No, they don't.
They want hard. They want to read it. I miss a good old newspaper that you can pop open and
loyal
read.
readers
Yes, they
like
are.
you wouldn't believe.
Yes,
Let it
they
be
are.
10 minutes late.
And but I thought, okay, I needed to see that. I need to remember, because you get so focused on everything comes from social media, and a lot of it does. But there's a whole other group that does not do social media, and you've got to reach and communicate to that group just like you focus on communicating with your social media group. And I needed to see that at that
Well, and
particular
can I tell
time.
you, we don't have to explain a lot to that group.
No, you don't, because
Yeah,
they
they
read
read
it.
it. They read it.
Cover to cover, and I've had several of them go, hey, I'm on your website every day too. But when I read it from beginning to end, I feel a sense of completion. I feel like I've at least read the stuff y'all thought was most important. I may sometimes miss something online, but I don't miss it in print. So, and they vote, by the way.
In our
They're the
generation, you
most
got the
likely to vote.
Post-Herald in the morning and the Birmingham
We
News
did.
in the
Two
afternoon.
newspapers a
And
day.
I
Those were the
looked
days.
forward to that. Amy laughs at me from, I just look
No,
forward
it's
to that.
It's true. They don't understand. Growing up in
Thank you.
Tuscaloosa, I read the Post-Herald, I read the Birmingham News, I also read the Tuscaloosa News.
Yeah.
I read 3 newspapers a day for most of my life. I miss that desperately, but we have worked hard to try to bring that mentality to our online
Well,
stuff.
and thank you for doing that. It just opened my eyes when he got out, and that he specifically came to get that paper out of your box.
Yeah, the
And
papers come out on
That's
Thursday
why I'm print
morning.
ad. It's still worth the money. Just
Yes,
putting that
it
out
is.
there.
Print comes out on Thursday morning now. So it used to come out on Wednesday, it now comes out on Thursday mornings.
Oh, I bet you got some complaints
the
on
Tribune
that.
parking lot is a happening place on Thursdays.
It
There's
probably
a lot
was.
of people
It
just pull
probably
in,
was a
stop, get
Thursday.
out. They don't care who else wants to get in. They're going to go get their paper,
That's
get back in the
so
car, and they'll be on
Well,
their
I
way.
witnessed it, so
Yeah,
but
they
it
won't
was
pull in a
it's just a
parking
good
place.
reminder that
It
you're
is.
not reaching your whole audience
Yeah.
just through social media.
No, there's a lot
So
of
thank y'all for
places
what you
I
do.
love it.
Thank you for printing a paper and offering it for free.
The only thing I'm thinking that we hadn't really talked about was infrastructure. Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about that.
I
mean,
didn't
you
even.
may
I
see
thought
some
no.
other
I thought
items,
we'd
but
covered everything.
I
but
don't
yeah.
think we hit on that.
We've
Okay.
not talked about infrastructure. That's a hot
So,
topic.
yeah, I mean, I've heard 1 or 2 people in Trussville complain about traffic. Doesn't come
Really?
up often, but occasionally. And I sit at my desk and watch it all day. But, so you know where this is going. You've mentioned already the growth we've been through. At the same time, our most important east and west corridors in this city are state and county roads, not city roads. So,
And there's
whoever
a
will-
railroad.
and there's a railroad. So whoever will be mayor, and I gotta say, I think you and Danny Garrett made some very substantial improvement in the railroad. If nothing else, the relationship. Doesn't mean trains don't stop anymore, but we don't have
It's
any parked
much
there for
better.
10 days. And even the ones that do stop are not nearly as intrusive as they used to be. So I know you and Danny Garrett spent a lot of time on that, both in Montgomery and in Washington. And I do think some progress was made there. I will also say this, because we've mentioned it before, but a lot of people don't realize Danny Garrett is probably the only state representative that the railroads have come up against who is also the former CFO of a railroad company. And he knew the rules, and they knew it, which is why they poured into Montgomery to meet with him. He scared them.
Yeah.
And we all saw that. So, but that's one part of the infrastructure. Whoever becomes mayor is going to have a great relationship with the state of Alabama, with ALDOT, and with our county commissioner, Joe Knight, because it's off Roads County Road. Talk about that. Talk about what your vision is. We all know we have I think we really only have a major traffic problem at morning rush and afternoon rush, unless there's a wreck on the interstate
Sure.
rerouting traffic.
Right.
But all that said, what is your plan if you become mayor? What would you prioritize, and how would you make it happen?
All of it. First of all, you just, I mean, there again, we grew so quickly, outgrew our infrastructure very quickly, and we do have a railroad that everything's, parallel. So it's the railroad, it's how.
I coughed over her. She said all of it.
All of it, all of it. We have the railroad, we have Highway 11, and we have 59, and they pretty much run parallel to each other. So the only way to get around the railroad is bridge over it. And that's, we know, very, very expensive. So in my 5 years of serving, almost 5 years serving on Trussville City Council, something that I brought to the table through my foundation work, which is really an odd piece for a nonprofit to be involved on a federal level, but through the Will Bright Foundation and a group in Washington wanting to bring a parent's perspective, really focusing on the opioid crisis, how it's affecting communities, brought us to Washington. That started in 2018. And we joined this group called Voices for Non-Opioid Choices. I'll go through this real quick, but I have to tell it because it sets it up. So through this, we work with good legislation on a federal level of how we address the opioid crisis, how insurance pays for non-opioid pain management. We got a bill passed that just started in January. Bill passed. Now that was
new.
That was huge. Yeah. This group has over 150 people associated with it, like 180 senators and congressmen involved in supporting it. Currently, Katie Britt is supporting our Alternatives to Pain Act. Anyway, we got this passed, and it's through Medicare right now, where it will pay for non-opioid pain management options that normally they wouldn't pay. So Medicare will now pay for that. If you're going to go have a shoulder surgery, get like a shot, they'll pay for that now. Normally they wouldn't, but they'll pay for opioids. Now we're trying to get it down to the Veterans Association. That's our new bill that we're working on, and eventually down to private pay. All that to say, that teed the foundation up to really get to know all of our federal partners and their staff, because the staff runs the country.
That's right. Staff runs the country. Is the one that got elected.
Yeah.
You're right.
So that allowed us to have that. So bringing that in as a new city councilor, I had those relationships. So early on, we, of course, we have a train problem. That's our biggest issue. Got together with Birmingham, City of Birmingham, Mayor Woodfin and Mayor Choate, myself, Darrell O'Quinn from City of Birmingham, and Norfolk Southern. And we sat down and worked out a plan and the ability to write for a CRISI grant, which is an acronym for a lot of, it's railroad related, Federal Railway Association. And we wrote a planning grant to help Harris Homes in the Birmingham area, and in Trussville to bridge over Mary Taylor Road, which is down by Belmas. So we were granted this $8 million planning grant, which is huge. I don't know that the city's ever gotten a grant from the Federal Railway Association, especially of that size. So this has been going on for a little over a year. So we're doing a planning grant, allows you to do all the engineering and planning for this to happen. So when we finish this up, we'll have that ready to go and start writing for the implementation. It will also build 4 miles of side tracking, which will allow Norfolk Southern to park trains on the side track from South Chalkville Road down into North
That's what
Chalkville.
was going on.
They were parking
for
Yeah.
100,
Yeah.
going in Golden Rule and getting some lunch.
Well,
we
sent Rod Burkett with his drone to the Irondale rail yard, and we proved it.
Yeah. But there again, they'll say they were there first, and they kind of were. So all that to say, we just started working together,
Right.
that collaborative piece. So Birmingham working with Trussville, both of us working with Norfolk Southern. That goes to the relationships that we started building soon after I got on to council. Always been a relationship there, but really took it to the next level of we can't have this. I mean, when the train is stopped, everything is just chaos, especially if it stops at school pickup time. I mean, it's just
Right.
awful. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous to first responders. You can't move, them around quickly enough. So I have those partnerships. If ever you're going to do anything that involves the railroad, it involves federal roads, it's major money. A city cannot do that. Our short little road that we built, the city built in off of Camp Coleman into the park on Commerce Circle, about a fourth of a mile, $1.3 million. a fourth of a mile. Now, we had to put all the infrastructure in, you know, and clear it. I mean, it was a big project.
And I think that does pay off for the city down the road.
Oh,
That's
not complaining
cool
about that, but it's an
scenario.
understanding of how expensive everything is.
Right.
So I do have those federal partnerships.
And that was a city road, not a state highway.
100%, and which means we had to pay for all of it.
Right.
So county, Joe Knight, good friends with Joe Knight. We're fellow Rotarians together. Great working relationship with him. We're actually working on a county project on trying to, you know, we're all about finding connector roads to pull cars off of Highway 11. So we're working on that, which is a county project, but we're going through federal because it's huge. It's a $30 million project. But we've got to have more connector roads, especially on south of South Chalkville off of Roper. If you want to go to Publix and you live down by Trussville Country Club, you got to come all the way down to Highway 11, and then we're estimating, if this project goes through, about 14,000 cars a day pulled off of Highway 11, which is huge.
Yeah, that is.
But it takes being in front of your federal partners. I have that. I've been there. When I go for the foundation, I slip in and say hello, make sure they see me face to face. I mean, we're in D.C. Frequently for the foundation, that they see me, and they not only see the foundation, but they see the city of Trussville. So those things have really kind of worked. When I came on, I thought, oh, doing the city work is really going to help me in my foundation work, which is great, and it had. But what I didn't realize is how much the foundation work helped me with the city, and it was the partnerships. Working with the state, you know, you've got your county, you've got your federal, and you have your state, so that's ALDOT, and it's staying in communication with Mr. Cooper. So the mayor has done an excellent job of staying in front of him. We do have I-59 being worked on, and that was a huge project, and it's going to be so beneficial to the city.
And the North Chalkville
Chalkville Road, which was county. Have you driven it?
I drive it every day. I live there.
That's right. It's right. You're on Snake Hill. I mean, it's so nice to be able to come. So you got to have that. And I'm not going to brag, but people tell me I need to. I have that. I have those relationships. They're already there. We've already worked on projects together, and I think that's key. For your mayor needs to be able to pick up a phone and call that person, and be able to have a conversation. And they already know who you are. You're not introducing yourself. They already know who you are. We work with the railroad. We have a little text thread that as soon as the train is stopped, boom, we're texting to let them know, because if someone doesn't call that in, they may not know. And it could be that it's maintenance and we can't do a thing about it. But a lot of times it's a dispatch, and they're trying very hard not to block Trussville. And I think that's helped a lot. It's not perfect. It will never be perfect. But I feel that void very well, because I know them, they know me. We work well together, have in the past, and hope to in the future.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked about infrastructure.
It's pretty important.
It's huge. One thing, funny story, so we were going through an economic development class, the mayor and I and Alan Taylor, we were doing this class, and they wanted us to, what are the top 3 complaints in Trussville? And so we kind of thought, and I said, okay, well, you know, there's traffic, and, you know, and there's the train, and then there's trash. So the 3 T's, traffic, trains, and trash, those are our top, and they are.
Yeah.
And you can easily remember them that way, because they're the 3 T's.
Thank you for not putting the Tribune on your list.
No,
if it was you 3, I'm surprised we weren't number 1. Well, there's the Tribune.
There's the Tribune, and then
That's
there's
our
the
number 1
Tribune.
problem.
No. So all good.
Good deal. I appreciate it. Do you have anything
No,
else?
I think we've covered everything.
Chris, how we do on our timing here? What are we looking at?
Hour 57.
Whoa! And I was thinking we'd maybe do an hour. Sorry, I'm
I
looking
we're gonna wrap
seriously
this
thought
up.
this was the shortest one.
We're going to wrap this
Oh,
up.
well, that makes me feel good.
And listen, and our audience will see this when it comes out. We're holding all of this till qualifying's complete. If there is a wild card candidate that jumps in, obviously we would have to take care of them before we release them.
Gosh, I hope not.
So do we.
Yeah.
We're tired and we ain't gotten started yet. But Brandon and I appreciate very much.
Yes.
All 3 candidates have really given of their time to sit down and have a ridiculously in-depth conversation.
It's needed.
But as I said, this is a new administration. And when you look at what the current administration that you're a part of, Mayor Choate's administration, when you look at what he accomplished in
literally building a new downtown for Trussville. When you look at what Mayor Melton accomplished, I'm going to throw the Civic Center in with the school system because I thought that was something, an amenity that really moved our city forward.
Yes.
New administrations can really change
100%.
the future of a city, and I think everybody out there, regardless of how they feel about any candidate, wants our city to succeed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And well, thank y'all for spending your time, because not everybody does this. I look forward to the forum. I know y'all are hosting a forum. Yeah, and look forward to that. And just thank you for letting me share my story, who I am, what I've done, what I want to do. That's important for voters to hear. And I hope that they take the time to listen to this 2-hour interview.
Well, and we do appreciate you. And this is unique in that we have 3 people running for mayor that have served in public office. And I talk about this a lot. I pick on y'all relentlessly. That's kind of my job. But at the same time, unbelievable respect for people who are willing to put themselves out there and run for office. I want no part of that. But I really, really
It's
appreciate
not for the faint of heart.
I appreciate the people that do it, because it wouldn't be me. But I do. That is far more service than the average person realizes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's hard. I will not joke you on that one. It is hard, but that's another thing that I think equips me for it is I've lived through the worst day you could possibly live through.
That's right.
And this is important. Our community is important, and I want to serve, and that's all I want to do is serve.
Matters,
right, 100%, 100%.
Lisa.